Okay, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. This is episode number 154. I was asked by my friend Sheldon Hoyte, who I did a podcast with last week, mainly focusing on the issues around race. And he texted me out of the blue. He was hosting a live DJ set on a show called Soca Passion Live. And he invited me to come on and talk about my experiences growing up in Ohio, playing in a steel band, and sort of he moderated a discussion with myself and about 3 or 4 other total strangers I had never met, but that he was friends with, and it was all the things. It was beautiful, it was hard, it was interesting, it was humbling, and one of the guests on the show who I spoke with during the show is coming on my podcast on Saturday. Her name is Mecca. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and because I certainly did, and I hope you learned something from it. So enjoy. This is Soca Passion Live, moderated and hosted by Sheldon Hoyte. All right, enjoy. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
212. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What's up? So today, we're going to do things a little bit different. We want to start the conversation as to where we go from here. So we know, I would like anyone who has anything to say to join us, share the live. We have Josh Quillen who will be joining us in a little while. All right. We have Christina, who is originally the host of this time slot, this show. She's on the line. The cell management, we all here. We're expecting to be joined by Dane, Mr. Soca Passion. So the whole goal of today's show would be to discuss solutions. We have already identified all the problems, and we see day after day how more people are emboldened to pretty much just express themselves the way they are, to express their true selves. We see a bunch of people of, let's say, Indian background or Indian heritage. We see Dominicans who are also coming out. So we see, I saw a video with a Jewish guy and a Japanese lady. So we are seeing everyone coming out of them, pretty much showing who they are. Right? So we understand that there is a problem with all, not just systematically. It goes to the fabric of who we are as individuals. So our discussion today pretty much is going to be around what we think could be done as far as solution, presenting a solution, right? So today we have with us Josh Quillen, and let me just introduce Josh. Josh is someone who I met playing steel pan with Brooklyn Steel Orchestra. And this was a few years ago, right? A few years ago. Now, if you notice, if you look at the screen, Josh is with us now. Josh is white, right? We're not mixing words today. Josh is white. And Josh has been around the pan community for some time now. And he's well known and he's well liked within the pan community. Now, I had the pleasure last week of being on Josh's podcast, right? And Josh pretty much wanted me to share my experience. There was no preconceived direction of where this interview went. It was just me sharing my experience and thoughts. And I appreciate that from Josh. So when this opportunity presented itself this afternoon, I decided to ask Josh to return the favor. And without hesitation, Josh was willing to join us today. So now, Josh, let me introduce you to who else we have on the screen here. We have Lacelle, who is pretty much we call her management for Soca Passion Live. We have Christina is the original host of this show that I am doing right now. And due to certain circumstances, I end up doing the show, and her availability opened up and she decided to join.
Hi, Christina.
So now I know you guys watching me drink my coffee. It doesn't matter what time of day, I drink coffee anyway. So what we are trying to do today, and the reason I asked Josh here is because Josh said something in our interview last week that stuck with me, right? And it poses a question: how do we change that aspect of the innate desire to treat someone differently because of the color of their skin? Now, if so Josh grew up in, where were you born? Ohio or Wyoming?
Dover, Ohio.
Dover, Ohio. So Josh is from Ohio, and Josh grew up. The thing that Josh said that stuck with me was the fact that when he was younger, right? When he was younger, he was not. Hold on, we have more Soca Passion family joining Josh. So if you see one or two more people in the screen, this is the team. This is every one of us is part of the team.
How you doing, Marky?
Pretty much, you said something last week, Josh, in the context of when you were younger, right? There's a certain practice in the community or a certain perception of black people, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of where that comes from. Prior to you being exposed to steel pan and people of other races. So I would like you now to first of all introduce yourself to us and to the rest of the team. Tell them about your background, because we had this conversation last week, and just explain to everyone that point of view from your family growing up back in Ohio to the point where your exposure to different cultures changed your perception. So I would like to start there.
I'm happy to answer, and just before we move forward, I'm happy to answer literally any question anybody has about anything. I will do the best I can to answer it. And I also want to say, moving forward, I don't ever want to give the perception I'm speaking for anyone but myself. The world is very complicated, as I imagine each and every one of you is a complicated person. So I don't want to assume anything other than I'm just going to tell you what I've seen. And you can take it as a data point to make decisions moving forward. But my name is Josh Quillen. I grew up in Dover, Ohio. And I would say had a very stereotypical Midwest upbringing. I was born in 1979. This is all pre-internet, pre-YouTube, pre-anything. And just my town, it's very small. At the time, it was a very, very small town. I think now it's maybe population 25,000, but initially, I would guess it was more in the neighborhood of 12. It's just a very small town, cornfields everywhere, right? I would say I grew up in a town that was loving, caring. I played on a baseball team that had, there was one black kid on the baseball team. His name was Avery, or Julius Avery. And there was never any feeling, never any overt feeling I had as a young kid of I need to treat Julius differently. He was just on my baseball team. Just like Abby Gonder was, and my friend Danny, and it was our crew, But I think I did grow up watching 24-hour news, watching the way politicians talk, the things that they choose to highlight in the news, the things they choose to highlight when they're deciding to talk about things in public on the floor of the Senate, all of it. You grow up, you see it, you watch it. I would say I use the word ignorance and I say that in sort of the most honest, genuine way. There's just a lot of things that folks just don't know, and don't come from a place. And when they say things or they ask questions or they don't know, it doesn't come from it. And I mean this sincerely. It doesn't come from a place of hate, at least overt hate, in the sense that If I felt like my town when I was growing up was a cancerous place that I should disown and burn down because of their beliefs, I would have done so. So, and I think that's why I appreciate the conversation with Sheldon here, is because I think he trusts me and I trust him enough to know that, like, I just want you to believe me when I say that. Trust me when I say it was a beautiful place, and I wouldn't do it again differently if I had the option. Why? The other reason why is because I had all the similar upbringings that I think a lot of kids do in the Midwest who maybe don't interface with other cultures, whether it be African American or whether it be Jewish or whether it be, Islam or whether it be atheists. Like, it's just, my town, for whatever reason, just didn't interface a lot with many different types of cultures, except that I had a teacher named Joan Wenzel who graduated from the University of Akron. She studied with a teacher of mine named Larry Snyder, and he was very close with a gentleman named Cliff Alexis, who taught at Northern Illinois University, was one of the first two major steel pan tuners with Ellie Minette to move up from Trinidad. Cliff somehow landed in St. Paul, Minnesota, and then built a set of steel drums that my high school band director, who's just a white lady from Ohio, Joan Wenzel, just happened to know Cliff somehow through her college studies, bought this set of drums and started a steel band at my high school. And when I was in fifth grade, I had all the things that I think all the 24-hour news and the sort of biases that people talk about, the ignorance that I didn't know about slavery. It just was a thing I didn't know. I wasn't educated very well on it. All of the textbooks, as we all talk about, are systemically biased towards a specific viewpoint. It's all of that. But I was really lucky in fifth grade. Somehow, somebody injected a steel band in my life, and it was Joan Wenzel, a white lady from Ohio. And I just started playing. And as soon as I joined in ninth grade, she invited Cliff Alexis to come and tune. Cliff was the first Black person I ever knew in my entire life who I had a conversation with as a ninth grader. I wasn't mature enough to have the types of conversations initially with him that I did have later, but I think like right now in these moments where the world is on fire, everybody's angry, and rightfully so. I think of like, oh my God, if everyone could just play in a steel band from ninth grade, not going to solve all the problems at all. This issue is way too complicated to say that's like, it's simple. But I think the conversation now would be much different with, I think, populations who maybe like don't just never interface with each other for whatever reason. Cliff was the first. I got to college. I went to the University of Akron, and Cliff, I was put in charge of driving Cliff around. Like, he flew in, and I was sort of tasked as a percussion student in college to drive Cliff around, make sure he got to his hotel, get him food. First thing I did when I picked Cliff up at the airport, we drove him to a barber shop, and he said, "I need to go get my hair cut. I can't find a good barber shop in Illinois." And I was 20 years old, and I just didn't know. And I said, "Why?" And he said, "What do you mean, why?" And I said, "Why do you have to? What do you mean? There's a barbershop here. I go over here. There's 15 other ones I can take you to." That for me was a sliding door moment in terms of like, Cliff very calmly explained to me why his hair was different than mine, why he needed to go to a different barbershop. And he did it in this way. He said, "Okay, let's go." And he said, turn here. And he took me to a part of the town I had never been to. I didn't even know existed. I was scared. I was insecure. I was nervous. I didn't know what to say. I didn't recognize anything or anybody around me. I'm just telling you, I'm just being honest here. Like, I know it sounds silly for me to say that, but I went to, he took me into his barbershop, and he said, "Sit there." And there was a corner chair, and I sat in the chair, and we were there for 2 hours. He got his hair cut for about 15 minutes of those 2 hours. And they just shot the shit and talked. It was like I was seeing a newspaper in real time, right? They were just talking about the stuff that had happened the day before, about what they want to happen the next day, catching up about family life, catching about all of it. There was the op-ed section of the barbershop. There was the sports section of the barbershop. There's like, it touched on all the bases that the newspaper or the modes of communication that I grew up with, watching my dad read the newspaper at the counter. And again, I'm not saying that Black people don't read the newspaper, but for me, I was like, oh, this is another way to communicate. this is not like the thing of, oh, that's why. Like, okay, it made more sense to me. And then Cliff sent me to Trinidad. And I was in Trinidad as a 22-year-old, 21-year-old, and was the first time in my life where I was the only white person in the room. And I was there for 3.5 weeks in 2002. I played with Phase 2 Pan Groove, and I was assigned the gentleman to teach me the tune, and I sat in that pan yard for 2 weeks, and no one said a word to me other than the person teaching me the tune. There was no animosity, just to be clear. I never felt uncomfortable. I never felt unsafe. I never was scared. But there was a clear moment of like, I need to understand something here, and I just don't know it yet. So I'm just going to shut up and, I don't know the tune yet. So what do I should just practice first. Let's get that out of the way. And so 2 weeks into it, a gentleman tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around, and he introduced himself, but he had the camouflage, and pardon my ignorance here on this a little bit. I'm sure I'm not explaining this right, but he had the Black Panther fatigues on with the patch and the beret. He was from the 60s and older gentleman. He tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around, and he just said, "Hello, I would like to speak with you." And I thought to myself, I think I said this to you, Sheldon. I thought to myself, I was like, this is it. It's over. I'm a dead man. What did I do? Like I had never had this type of conversation before. And he just shook my hand, and I feel terrible. I don't remember the gentleman's name, but he said, "You're really good." And he just said, "Thank you." And I said, "What's the beret for?" Like that was the only thing I could get out of my mouth. And he just very calmly explained to me what the Black Panther movement was in Trinidad in particular. And I know it's different than it was in the States. He just talked to me. He taught me. He showed me, and introduced me to his friend Castro, who had first guy that I didn't know what dreadlocks were. I didn't understand. I just didn't know. I didn't know what Rastafarian culture was. I didn't know that different parts of the Black culture look at dreadlocks maybe slightly in different nuanced ways. Like there's not a clean, like, yes or no to any of these answers, even within the Black community, right? In the same way that there's not any clean answers in the white community. I mean, this is what was becoming apparent to me. It's like, oh, they operate, and sorry to use the word they, that sounds shitty when I say it that way, but it's like they operate the same way that my cousins do when we hang out at Christmas. It's just a different thing. Like, it's just I just kept saying to myself, oh, for 2 weeks in Trinidad. And then this gentleman spoke with me, and I learned something. And then from that point on, dude, the generosity I've received specifically from the steel band community is one that I now in this moment, the specific moment in history, and I see all my white friends. And again, I hate saying that way because, like, to me, I believe very strongly that we cannot be binary about the way we see each other, or we're all screwed. And I think that steel band right now, I'm very grateful for it because it allowed me and forced me to I'm not capable of seeing this moment in a binary way. Other than the like, no. Like, you're either on the right side of this or you're not.
You're on the wrong side. Correct.
Me? Oh, yeah. Or no. You say I'm on the wrong side? No.
I say you're either on the right side or the wrong side.
Right.
However,
big picture, that's true. But I would say in the long term, the way we solve these problems, and Sheldon, that's why I wanted to talk to you about this, is because it's clear to you and it's clear to me that there's not a clean answer to any of this. Like, there's going to be shades of gray on every issue. We need to talk about that. And then I also need to not ascribe intent or motives to your viewpoints, because I don't know what your motives are. And I just have to trust that they're good and we can learn from each other. So all of that said, Sheldon, that was a really long answer to your question. I apologize for that. But
that's fine. I think you hit all the points. So one question though, and here right now we're simply having a discussion to try to find ways to move forward, right? And the question I have, because clearly, apparently, there's a disconnect. And when we say a disconnect, we had this conversation last.
Oh, you're muted, Sheldon.
Goodness. All right. So now, sorry. All right. So clearly, there's a disconnect from where we grow up and the information we receive to what is actually out there, what the actual experiences are. And the reason I asked about you growing up and where you grew up is to identify a specific point that you grew up and you had no idea other than what you saw your dad watching on the news and what was written in the newspaper. Now, the issue with that, in my opinion, is that, and we also touched on this last week, is that the news media or the outlets direct a particular message to a particular group of people. Right? So their message, let's say to Ohio or Wyoming or people who they believe to be conservative, would be that highlighting the negative aspects of the black community. Right? And I would go on the other side also, because you have those who are extremely liberal and all they do is highlight what's wrong on the other side, right? So now a big question came up, and I had to battle with this myself as to why in the world would someone vote for Donald Trump? He is a bigot. He's proven to be racist. He's a dishonest man. He cares about no one but Donald Trump. I had to take a step back and realize, and I'm talking about people who I'm close to, who voted for Donald Trump.
Me too.
Now, when I analyze it, it's like, okay, they voted based on what policies they wanted to see implemented, and they believed that he was a better candidate to do that, right? So that's just that. So we have this big divide on politics, and I think a lot of us need to separate politics and look at each other as just human beings, right? So my thing to you, Josh, and it is a question you may not be able to even begin to answer this, but it's a challenge I will pose to you, and I know your time is short, is aside from steel pan, right? How else can someone like you and people who are like you, who are white folks, and we're saying black and white, and we're not sugarcoating anything here today, all right? Because that's what we're looking at. Initially, I said it's a straight black and white issue, but my realization is more than that, because it's black, white, Chinese, Spanish, Indians, and everyone else who has their opinion and their identity and their views. So you as a white man, right? And I say that with all respect, how do you think that people who grow up in communities like yours could be exposed? And that's a challenging question. I don't know if you have any single answer to that. I doubt, because you pretty much, your path to exposure was the steel pan.
Yeah.
We won't find that somebody in Wyoming may be exposed to that also. But for the people like you who have been exposed, how do you get that message back to the roots of where you're from? That, hey, listen, the message we are spreading in our community, the way we're growing our kids, that's not the reality. Black people are not all violent criminals. How do you, one, address that? And what do you think white folks could do to get that message to their roots?
Well, I think as you were talking, I there's lots of things that I think if I were to go back now, I would be like, maybe I should just be. I wish now we could go back and. Sorry, I don't know. I'm trying to think real hard here. Like, I grew up watching the show Cops. I would posit that show has done more damage to the black community and the white community in terms of how we see things than in terms of where my experience lies. Nobody was. I mean, you know what? We have all grown up hearing the N-word. I have, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm not racist in any way. Right? Like, this is a human thing. I've had more experience in the black community than a lot of my friends, but I still walk down the street in Trinidad, and I still have moments where my lizard brain pops up and is just like, oh my God, be afraid. And I have to actively be like, Josh, this isn't that time. And to me, it's like learning how to bench press. Like, at first you're good at doing like 20 pounds, and it takes a long time to get good at it. And to me, I think there's a human skill that we all have to get good at, which is realizing that we are all evolved humans that are complicated, and we all have things. There are tools in our brains that we just don't need anymore. And shows like Cops and the 24-hour news networks, all they do is they feed on that particular part of our brain that relies on fear and danger and being scared and otherism and all of that stuff. If it bleeds, it leads. There's a reason we watch the OJ car chase glued to the TV, right? Like, at least my community did. It was like watching a TV show. We had been trained by watching Cops that it was like normal to watch somebody being chased down the freeway. That was normal. So that is like a larger societal thing that I think we should be, just as a society across the board, be thinking long and hard about, like, how we monetize reality for a lot of people. And I would say we need to be careful about that. In terms of my own, how I personally feel like minds are changed on this stuff and how we fix it. I think starting a steel ban, I think folks would be really surprised at how many steel bans there are in Ohio now. Just as a, like, if you're just looking for data points of things that are tangible that you can do that will solve a problem, at least today, but you're not going to see the results of until 20 years later. Like, a steel ban was planted in Dover, Ohio in 1983 or something. It's now 2020, and that band is still there. It's twice the size, and they sell out about 1,200 tickets a year for this concert in my high school auditorium that's packed with all of the people I grew up with, all white. And so I don't want to discount the idea that the steel band, if we just, we found $2 trillion to just throw at the country when the pandemic happened. If we found 100 million just to say every middle school in this country, black, white, Asian, it doesn't matter what you are, you get a steel band. Like, I genuinely think in 20 years, again, not that all the problems will be fixed, but the conversation will be easier and different. I think it is incumbent upon, the thing I've learned in having conversations with friends of mine who voted for Donald Trump, the things trying to dislodge. I mean, Sheldon, I've been seeing a lot of the conversations on your page, but also friends of mine, the conversation around all lives matter versus Black Lives Matter. Like that, like, if I'm just going to pick a specific thing that online culture has decided is the thing. And when I say online culture, what I'm seeing is predominantly white people making this argument that, like, fighting with flamethrowers about all lives matter. And it's as if we solved that problem, racism's done. And to me, I just keep thinking, like, it took me 20 years to learn what I know now. It's ridiculous of me to assume anybody's going to feel about this the way I do after one Facebook post where I claim I'm blocking them, and aren't I proud? That's not going to work. I guarantee you, if there's a white friend of yours who says something like that, I guarantee you it's not going to work to block them and ignore them, because 99% of those people just don't know.
All right.
I'm telling you, they just don't know.
All right, and that's sorry to cut you off, but that's pretty much based on our conversation. That is what I got from that. Now, I have another very difficult question for you, because you said something just now that I am 100% on board with, and after I'm done with this question, I'll open it up to anyone else who is in our Zoom, anyone of our team, to ask you a question.
Please.
Right? I know you have, and for those who are here, Josh has another engagement in a little while, so I'm going to try to just hit this question and as brief as a response as you could give me, and then I'll open it up to anyone else who may have a question. Because
I appreciate you reining me in, Sheldon. You really need to box me in, buddy. You're the host. So go for it.
Yo, we had to deal with this as real as we could, right?
Yeah.
Other question I would ask, since you just said that about steel pan and all that stuff, right? Now, there is this conversation going, and it's a blunt conversation. Now, let's suppose that they take 100 million and invest it into all the schools in America. The issue will come up that white people are trying to take over steel pan. How would you respond to that?
I would say that I would say that anyone from the community who feels that strongly is absolutely entitled and welcome to that feeling. I'm never going to tell somebody they shouldn't have that feeling. I have been to Trinidad. I know a handful of white people who I've been told if they ever get off the plane will never get back on it because they have a reputation in Trinidad as of one of thievery, that they will steal something and try to take it back and claim it as their own. It happens. Cultural appropriation is a real thing. But for me, my experience with that sort of mentality has been because of somebody culturally thieving something from Trinidad or from the steel band world. So I just want to be careful here to say, like, I don't think anybody shouldn't have that feeling. If you have it, it's justified because it has happened and it will continue to happen. It happens in every field, not just in steel pan. It happens in the African drumming world, Awe drumming groups. It happens. I mean, this is not a new feeling to have. I just want you to know that I'm never going to tell you that you shouldn't have that feeling because I've seen it in the flesh. I know people who steal, so it's a real thing. But I would say look at the data points. Look at me. Did I steal? Am I stealing? If you perceive me as someone who's stealing something from you, I really, really want to sit down and talk with you because I think the experiences I've had, again, I can only speak for myself. I go through my life trying to be very generous and say hello, how are you first before I start putting my agenda on somebody. No one has ever told me in the steel band community I'm stealing anything from them. So I would say that if that conversation comes up, I would just say we need to have a conversation about it. So let's sit down and talk. I would never say like, you're dumb, don't feel that. Like I would say what I'm saying to you right now, Sheldon. I would say, let's talk about this because I think this is important. And if it takes us 20 years, it's frustrating. It's not sexy to solve it all in one day. I would say, let's chat because I can also introduce you to a lot of people like myself whose lives, whose views on racism, whose views on bigotry, whose views on food, on laughter, types of humor, on types of slang, my world's been changed by it. So if you feel like that sort of broad approach would be one of like, oh my God, the white culture's trying to steal it. Again, I get it. But I want you to know that the payoff, what you're going to see in 20 years, the payoff is going to be so much worth it. And I just I don't know anything other than to say that I've asked Sheldon to trust me on that. And he said yes. And I just need you to trust me that's at least a conversation I'm willing to have over the long haul. I'm going to die when I'm 92 years old, and I'm willing to have the conversation then in the same way right. I'm now at 40. So I hope that answered your question, Sheldon, but I feel like
that's good.
Too complicated a thing to sort of say
all right. I got you. And that's why I asked that question. So I think anyone else has a question. I see Christina unmuted us. Oh, Mecca definitely has a question. This is Mecca Rose. She's one of our DJs on Soca Passion Live. And she has had some less than pleasant experiences. Mecca, the floor is yours.
Hi, Mecca.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right. So I came in a little late, but I heard you saying something about basically with the steel pan thing. Doing that, bringing people together would kind of solve race relations. Do I have that correct?
Well, I want to be careful to say that it has over the last 20 years being in a steel band has singularly formed my view on race relations. So my hypothesis is if we can sort of somehow cram every U.S. citizen through a steel band, that conversation would be slightly easier than it is now. I think that's my standpoint on that.
All right. So my standpoint on that, I understand what you're saying, but my standpoint on that, we've been sharing our culture for years, and we still get killed in the street. We still don't have any reform. The problem we have is that this racism thing is systematic. It's not just about Black people and white people hanging together. There's justice for you. There's no justice for me when something happens. Us sharing our culture we haven't benefited from it at all. When people say that you steal it, you guys, it's not like a malicious, I'm going to take it. You got to understand that everything you guys touch becomes yours. Whether you're aware of it or not, it does, because this has been going on for centuries. Belly dance is the African art form, but you wouldn't know that because you see mostly white people doing it. White people, Spanish white people, Latino white people. That's who you see doing it. Rock and roll was a Black art form. Mm-hmm. that was taken from us. You understand? So sharing culture has never been the answer. It hasn't gotten us anywhere because you guys get the glory when we do all the work, and that's just the reality of it. So I get what you're saying, and it's nice and everything, but it doesn't solve the bigger problem, because the bigger problem is that no matter what we do as Black people, we still get stepped on. The Black woman is still the most disrespected, the most, underrated woman in the world. All right, we just recently, people started looking at us as beautiful. We're not the what's the word? We're not the idea of beauty globally. It's not that we're not beautiful, it's just we're not put on that forefront. So it's not just us coming together and being part of a steel band or any other thing, sharing the culture. We don't get fairness when it comes to the justice system. This system that this country was founded on in the first place, Black people weren't even considered people. The change it doesn't come from sharing cultures. That don't work. We have to have something systematic. Something has to be done on a grander scale. Because I have white friends that I'm cool with, but at the end of the day, they don't get scared like I get scared when I get pulled over by the police. So if you want to, and I understand you want to help, but if you really want to really help, you got to get your people. It comes from people in authority. Help us stand up to the people that's in authority in the government. Help us out. Help us with what we can do together, with or without you guys, or you guys can do it to make a change that's systematic. It's not about, we just want you guys to like us. It's not that. We want equality. The generational wealth. White people have 7 times the generational wealth that Black people have. What do you want? If you really care about us, do something to fix that. You understand? Get your people. Because it's not, we don't.
I think I also think it goes back to the saying, each one teach one. Like he said, he was oblivious. He was in his corner of Ohio. Meanwhile, there was the other side of Ohio that he just was absolutely oblivious to, until this one Black man took him over to that section of Ohio. So again, it goes back to each one teach one. You say get your people, but then we also got to get our people too. Right. You say you have white friends, like he said, when he went to Trinidad, his lizard brain was like, oh gosh, I'm scared. But we're the same way. When white people and white officers walk into the room, we're like, oh shit. It's time to go, or let's bounce, let's get out of here. This ain't for us.
The difference with that is that there's actually a history of us. The difference with that is actually a history of us being kicked down by white people, not just the police. Because those guys that killed Aubrey weren't even police officers. Understand? This is something that, no matter what part of the world you are in, whether it's in the small corner of Ohio, you can turn the TV and see that Black people, we deal with injustice. You don't have to be around Black people to see that. You're aware of that because you can turn on the TV and see that.
Mecca, one sec. All right. So I get your point, Mecca, and that's something that we're gonna discuss further. Because again, Josh, there's only so much Josh could do, and Josh, I appreciate you coming on here. And this is why I wanted to have this, because we need to share our real feelings, right? And Josh has to leave in a little bit, so I just want him to respond to Mecca.
I'm okay, Sheldon, just to be clear. I got a few minutes. I'm okay.
All right. So trust me, Mecca, we get it, right? We get it. We know it needs to be a systematic change, and that's why we decide we want to have this conversation today, and we're going to keep conversation going. The question is, what next? What next? There's no one formula. We know systematically that there needs to be a change, right? One, we need to listen to each other and understand each other's point of view and where we're coming from, and we need to try to figure out the best methods moving forward, because there's no one formula. There's not one.
And that's what I'm saying. There's no
right.
one formula.
But
the most important thing we can do is make that change with the whole system, with the government. If you want to help us and have a real change, we need that. We need fairness.
Correct. How do we achieve that? And that's the question we're asking today.
That's what I brought up.
How do we achieve that? Right now, it starts, and like Christina said, right? That's a start. And I'm not taking sides. I'm just being real with my point of view. The fact that Josh is saying that a start could be to use steel pan as a tool to expose some people who may not have that malicious intent, but they just have not been exposed. That's one of the first things. We have more to discuss, but I want to discuss that. I just want to make use of Josh's time, and then we could go further into our discussions and ideas on different things we could do, right? Because we can't just sit and say, yo, what are you guys going to do? Clearly, we witnessed all this going on daily. This is not the first time. And since, let's say since the year has begun, even since this last protest, the past week, there's been so many incidents of where people are being mistreated because they're black. And now we are seeing more and more that we have to deal with the Dominicans, the people from DR. We have to deal with other Hispanics. We have to deal with people of Indian descent within our own Caribbean community. So this is not it has evolved into more than just a black and white. It's a black versus pretty much everybody else, right? Now we do have allies, and our discussion needs to be around what we could do or what our next steps are going to be. Because I've seen, and the reason I brought this question up, we are all on this Facebook group where there's like 50,000 people, and it's like, follow me on Instagram, I'll follow you back, black business, whatever. But it's chaotic, right? It's chaotic because I can't tell you how many, every day, every minute, I feel like there's somebody's posting their business or their information, follow me, I'm this close to 10,000. That's not the goal. You understand? But anyhow, I'll just let you speak again, Mecca, or I'll let Josh respond, and then I'll let you respond, and then we let Josh go on his way, and we'll continue the discussion. All right? So I want Josh to respond, and then I'll get back to you, Mecca.
First off, I just want to say, Mecca, thank you for sharing your time and your thoughts on this stuff. And I just want to say that, like, I'm never going to question your feelings on this. Like, they're yours and they're only yours. And I'm not going to pretend to have them. I think I want to do my best. I try to do my best to pretend like I have those empathize with you. Like, what would it feel like? I mean, I was forced to do that as a white person for the first time, working with a steel band in Brooklyn. Kendall Williams had me come in and work with Crossfire. And it was the first time in my life where I ever felt like I had to deal with what it meant to be white in a position of authority. Like, oh my God, now Kendall, my friend, is asking me to tell a large steel band what to do. And given all the things you laid out, Mecca, that are absolutely true, the historic oppression, 400 years of people with my skin color telling black people what to do. And it terrified me. And it was a huge responsibility. And I felt like all of a sudden I had a flamethrower in my hands, it's not just 400 years old, but as far as this country's concerned, I had a 400-year-old flamethrower in my hand in front of all my friends. And I was like, I don't know how to use this. I've never had this particular tool yet. So I kind of put it on the ground and followed Kendall's lead and only spoke about, like, hey, you came in a little bit early here. Listen to Jerry on in the drum section or whatever, as like, I need to learn how to do this too. Like, it's not my role to tell anyone how to do things. I need to learn how this ecosystem works. And Kendall, in the same way that Cliff, I think, with me early on when I was in college, Kendall was the person who sort of kept putting me in front of people, whether it be Martin Douglas, whether it be Jerry Williams, whether it be Sheldon or Travis DaVinci or any of these folks that, or Lakeisha or Arisha, like people that I got introduced to. I got better with that tool. And instead of it being a flamethrower, now it's more like a I have a microphone now. Like, I feel like I'm like, oh, I'm going to talk to my friends about stuff because there's just so much I don't know. There's no way I can ever know, Mecca. And it breaks my heart that I'll never know what it's like to drive my car and feel afraid. I'll never know that. And I want you, between you and me, I can't speak for all of my white friends, but like, just know between you and me, I think about that all the time. I think about it when I see Kendall drive away. And like, it's my buddy, I see his 2 kids and I think about that. And it terrifies me because the answer to your question about the system, Mecca, is I don't know. That's like, after all of this thinking, I feel like I don't know the best way I work in the system. I benefit from it. I teach at NYU. And if you don't think when I walk on stage and I see a room full of Brooklyn staring at me and I'm in front of a steel band being like, here's this culture that you gave to me and I'm going to show it back to you, that I am not absolutely inside riddled with fear and guilt and shame and all of the things. And I just had tried desperately not to say the right thing, or not to say the wrong thing. But in my experience, the way I learned how to hack the system for my friends in the best way I could as a 40-year-old, and I'm trying to try to get better so that when I'm 80, the system does what I want it to do. The way I did it, the way I was taught those tools was through a steel band. And I totally understand. I know 2 people who will never make it off a plane if they go to Trinidad because of that threat. And I don't take it lightly, but I guess I just want to say, Mecca, like, I want you to keep telling me stories, but so that you can build trust with me, because we met over Zoom. This is the worst place to meet anyone. You know, given the we're all been locked in our house since May, or March, but I want to ask you in this context to me, the way it's been done with Cliff is to somebody just slowly build trust. And you don't have to believe everything I say right now, but I know based on my relationship with Sheldon and Kendall and everybody else that in 5 years, you and I still will not completely understand each other's lives, but we'll at least be more aware of where the system has a soft underbelly and how to sort of poke it and get inside and sort of change it and become a weird good cancer inside the system to sort of bring it to its knees in the little bit that in that little chunk and part of the ecosystem that I feel like I can that I can intersect with. So all of that said, I feel like my answer to you, Mecca, is I don't know, but I want us to keep having this conversation because it means something to me. And this is the answer. I genuinely think it's the answer, but go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I'm sorry. Well, I appreciate that you did want to, address us and you want to learn, you want to understand. And I'm not here to bash you or be mean to you, but I'm just, because you want to know and you want to understand, I'm here to kind of open your eyes to some things that you probably don't know. What I'm saying to you basically is if you really want to help us, we need help with the system. We need you guys to use your privilege to help us out because we are disenfranchised. Because you do have a privilege, and I'm sure you're aware of that. Mm-hmm. And we need you to use that privilege to help the people who really don't have a voice. Yeah. We only recently got a voice. So that's the thing I'm saying to you, because we do go through these things, and it's more than just, you guys getting along with us. It's not that. We know you like us. We're aware of that. Well, for most people, for the most part, because y'all tag your skin and you do things that's culturally ours. So we know you like us. It's not about you liking us. It's about the fact that we're disenfranchised and you have a privilege that we don't have. So we would like for you to use that privilege to help us out. If you do like us, use that privilege to help us out, because you do see that we're disenfranchised. You see how we're treated. You don't want it for you. So use what you have to help us out.
Well, so one of the things that I will say in this discussion, the thing as we're talking, the thing I'm becoming more aware of just in my interactions with my white friends, if I had to sort of put a judgment on what's easier to do, convince my white friends of their privilege and what that means. Not that my white friends are I'm not trying to convince them that they're bad people, but just explain to them what this means, what systemic bias means, what systemic oppression is, what this all looks like, is it easier to convince them than that? Or is it easier to trick the system in small ways over the course of 15 years, like at NYU, for example? I have made mistakes. I haven't there are days where I've woken up and realized I didn't use my tool the right way yesterday. I need to fix that. I make mistakes and I'm going to continue to do it. But man, it has been easier for me to trick the system at NYU into allowing Brooklyn steel bands to come over since 2010 and commission people like Kendall and pay Mark Brooks and guest artists to come over. It's been way easier to do that than it has been to convince my friends to dislodge some ideology or viewpoint that they maybe gained without even knowing it. And, I've had conversations where I've convinced friends of mine to not vote for Trump on 2 occasions. It's only 2 people, it's 2 people. Like, it's not like I've changed the electorate, but 2 very close friends of mine. It's so frustrating. It's agonizing. And I want to scream and bash my head into the wall, but I know these people. I grew up with them and I know from where their bias comes from, and it's education. It's learned, it's taught. And I've recently, and oddly, the sad thing about these 2 people that I know and their viewpoints sort of changing is that it kind of, this moment right now, my brother is a blues musician in Charleston, and he's sort of a unicorn in his field too. He's a white guy in Charleston, South Carolina, playing blues. And so he works only with Black people in South Carolina. And he's now never been more politically active than he ever has been in his entire life. And my family members now look at him and they look at me, and it's now never more apparent than ever how important Black communities, and in particular for him, blues, and me, soca and calypso and steel band music, how important that stuff is to my life. And I can say now, sadly, it took Mecca with some folks 20 years to see that. But the truth is, the data point is that it worked. And so I guess I just want to say, I totally empathize with your situation and then the issues you're bringing up. I understand that they exist. I can just say that in my experience, it's been way harder to convince my friends, and that I think I want you to trust me as much as you can, even after this Zoom and what little trust we build here. The next time, I want you to know that I work on this, and it's tricky. Because if I go in there and start saying things like you're stupid and you're racist and you shouldn't think that, it shuts down more conversations with my people than anything. There's fear, there's shame, there's guilt, there's all of those things, and they don't know how to address it because they're people and they don't know what they don't know. And so again, in terms of how I changed that about myself, or how that was changed for me, was exactly like I said. I was fortunate to be just put. It's not about liking a culture or learning to like or getting along with. It's like really, truly understanding. Like Cliff Alexis showing me scars on the back of his head where cops beat him because he played steel pan. The idea that would even be a thing would never cross my mind. And so then that moment in high school, I then saw like, oh, I don't know how to fix this. It doesn't happen to me, but I know it exists. And so past that, I think I just want us to keep talking. I think that's I don't have a better answer past that, sadly.
I agree. I think the education, of course, what she was saying before, each one teach one. And we really, it's just, it goes beyond you, but just getting along. Totally. There needs some kind of police reform. But personally, everybody here pretty much for the most part knows this. When I was 9, my brother was killed by the police in front of my family. And he was only 18 years old. And those police that killed, he wasn't armed or anything. They was actually supposed to save him. He wanted to kill himself. And the police were called to stop him. And he turned to look at my dad, and then they shot him in the front and back.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Mecca. I don't know what to say other than I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, this affects me personally as well. This, but when I'm saying those cops, those 2 cops that killed my brother, they got desk duty, then they got paid suspension, then they were back on force. So there also needs to be police reform. There needs to be a system from the people at the top, people in the government don't look like me. The people that's in the Senate and the Congress, they don't look like me. They look like you. So if we get more of you guys with the privilege to help us make that change at the top, that'd be great. Not just with the people in the government, the Senate and Congress, and also with police reform. Yeah. Because also with the generational wealth. Every time we do something to get out of the hole, we get kicked back into it. For instance, Black Wall Street. It was a system in Tulsa, Oklahoma was the epicenter of Black Wall Street. And it was bombed by the government. So now we're here today where we are, like, again, you guys have 7 times the wealth that we do, generational wealth that we do. These are the things, these are the real issues, and again, I just want to make you aware. I don't know if you're aware or not, but make you aware of that. Because if you really want to help, that's where we can start, by educating each other.
Well, I appreciate you have mentioned things to me that I'm not aware of 100%. And to me, this is like what people need in the world, I think, are just more data points. I wish I had a better word than data point, but it's like your story to me is if it's now a thing that's in my brain. I can't unhear what you just said, right? Like it's there, for better or worse. I can't unhear it and I can't unforget it. And I don't want to, but it will now affect the way I walked through the world. It's not going to change everything. But now I have to see things differently. And I think my friends, my family members, my relatives, my high school kids I went to school with, like, what they need is just more data points. And
data points, I would call it more like aha moments. Just yes, like all the aha moments that you have. I think everybody just needs more aha moments is what it is. Because these cops, the police stations or whoever it is that hires them gives them the power to think that they're inferior to these people and they can do what they want to do. Right. But if you weren't a cop, would you still have done these to those Black people in the streets? No, because they probably would have beat you up. They probably would have called their homeboys, as you want to call it. But because you're a cop with a badge and a gun, you feel like you could do whatever it is because you were taught that these Black people, they're violent. You should fear for your life.
Yeah.
Again, each one teach one. This is what they were taught. OJ being chased down the highway. It's what, for lack of better words, it's what you guys knew. Cops, it's what you was taught. When in reality, that's not actually what it is. There are nice people, Black people. There are nice, educated Black people, wholesome Black people. Just because there are 1 or 2 out there that might be a little hostile, it doesn't make the whole race hostile. So again, I'm always going to preach each one, teach one.
Teach one.
These cops, the political people, they are taught that you have power and you can do what you want, when in fact you can't do what you want. Because if these people decide to fight back, this is what we get.
All right, thank you. So I just want to end this segment of our discussion. I want to thank Josh for being here, for facing some of the tough questions, for facing my peers, because our dynamic, Josh, it's already established, right? We established that we have a trust in each other. We establish a bond together. So our conversation would be easier to have than, let's say, like how Mecca came in and she has a whole different experience than I've had. I've shared my experiences with you, and it's nothing. That's my personal experience. It's nothing like Mecca's experience. Right?
Well, and Mecca, I would say, like, I have a podcast. It's called Concert Honesty, and it's mainly Sheldon's been on it now, and Kendall and Mark and Odie and Jerry on, and Cliff was on it. Cliff Alexis was on it a couple years ago. I like one-on-one conversations a lot. Because I really just I'm way better just getting to know one person. And so I want to put the invite out there. Mecca, if you'd ever like to come on my podcast, you and I can chat for an hour and a half, just getting to know each other. Like, and it's not like trying to solve any problems. I don't want to solve a problem in our conversation. I just want to get to know who you are. And where the conversation goes is totally up to us. I don't have an agenda of like, we need to talk about race or we need to talk about food and culture or anything, or police brutality or any of that. It's just me and you. So I'll put the invite out. Sheldon has my contact information. And I would say this, I didn't speak much with the rest of you, but the invite is there too, to anybody. But Mecca, if you want to talk more with me ever about this stuff, know that I have a mic and I can press record and we can get to know each other just a step better. Because again, if I'm going to say that that's the way to do it, then I have to be willing to do it. So just know that the mic in the invite is there. If you want to share your story, because my friends don't know that story. And if you want them to know about it, I can do that very easily. And I would love to do it. Forget my friends. I just would love to get to know you better. So take that for what it's worth.
I'll take you up on that offer.
Please do.
All right, I'll definitely share that information.
Please
So
do,
thanks, Josh, for joining us, and thanks for extending that offer and being willing and open to have these discussions. And this is not the last discussion. This is only the start, right?
You are quite welcome, Sheldon, and to everybody here. Genuinely, thank you so much. And I would really, 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 I'm going to put all of you equal responsibility here to figure out how we do this in person sooner than later. I'll put a mask on or whatever, but I think these conversations are better if we can feel each other's like energy a little bit in the room. Plus we can have some food, and that will make things way easier too. So thank you again, Sheldon.
Don't worry, I got you. I'll fly you out.
Thank you. Becca, everybody, thank you so much for everything. Appreciate it, Sheldon.
Thanks, Josh. All right, so let me play a song and then we'll go on with our conversation, because I really want this conversation to go to the direction of trying to figure out what we could do to contribute positively to getting ourselves out of this situation. So let me play a song and then we move forward, and we'll discuss that to everyone who would still like to be part of the conversation, and anyone else who's listening. All right.
Tell me what they're fighting for, what they're killing for. We don't need no more now. So tell them wicked people, fire go burn them, fire go burn them. Oh, oh Lord, I said this is the year for love. Fire go burn them, fire go burn them. Oh, say little boy, you ain't bad at all. No, another one just gone. By a beat your chest and smile, say you's a madman. Another young boy fall. Your soul can't rest at night. Oh, you's a bad man. Bad man is a man who is thief and woman and protect the young ones by any means, Lord. You ain't no bad man, boy, nah. You ain't no bad man. A real bad man just make his own decisions. He don't need anyone, he only needs God. You ain't no bad man, boy, nah. You ain't no bad man. So, sit down, rock back. Tell them I don't need no strap to defend my people from wicked and evil. Whoa. So, sit down, rock back. Big man, look for a walk. You're too damn evil. If they distress my people, then fire go burn them. Fire go burn them. Oh, oh Lord, I said this is the year for love. Fire go burn them. Fire go burn them. Oh, say little boy, you ain't bad at all. No, tell me what they're fighting for. What they're killing for, Lord. We don't need no war now. There's no need. So tell me what they're fighting for.
What they're fighting for. What they're killing for. All right. So now we get to the part of the conversation where we need to come up with some ideas and thoughts. I have my ideas, I have my thoughts. So, Christina, I know you was like, I don't know where to take this conversation and all of that stuff. Right? Now, we don't have to have a plan. We just have to talk about it and see. And within the discussions, then we could come up with a plan. Now, we already know systematically we are oppressed. Yes, in this 2020, that's a given. We know that we are experiencing it right now. We know that we want anyone who is of a different race to do what they can and use their privilege to help change our system. That's what we're working on. That's kind of why I would have the discussion with Josh and anyone else of another race to have that discussion with. There are a few people I want to have a discussion with, but I didn't get in touch with them, and it's because of their views. There's Indian people who saying that, and only excuse the language, that we behave like old niggas, and I'm not even talking about that lady that the cut us in trouble in the morning today. I'm talking about other people. Right? And if you look at the abodes, there's another lady that I see another post today about something where she talk about, yes, it's black, they killing each other. Look at who they only voting black people and they keep themselves down and all of that stuff. So a lot of people right? You look at the people from Dominican Republic who do not identify with blacks. Now, I don't know if the mirror working properly, but hey, you black too. I don't care what language you speak, right? People who have Indian descent with dark skin think they are different than us, right? So we are fighting a battle against so many people. A system designed to oppress us and is still being progressively oppressive, right? We are dealing with racial injustices, white people versus us. We dealing with the police versus us. We dealing with Indians and everybody else versus us, right? My question is, how do we start to unify? And the only way we could start a fight is by unifying, right? I have a theory or idea of how we could start to move forward, and it's by having conversations like these. Is by speaking to each other about the raw feelings and the raw emotions, but also we need to come up with a plan. Now I see the group that is all about black businesses and everything like that, and as I said earlier, it's just chaotic. It's just a bunch of people posting their Instagram tag. They're not telling you what their business is about. It's like, follow me. It's 50,000 people in here. Each of us could get 10,000 followers. But there's no really defined goal as to how that is going to affect change in the black community. Yeah, Alyssa.
That chat, I think I had invited a few of you to that chat because I was invited to that. It was originally created for us to find a way to build up the black communities. Like you said, it got chaotic because I see the same thing. And I think what their goal is for black businesses to start gaining money, because I guess on Instagram, after you reach a certain amount of followers, Instagram starts to pay you, just like Facebook. So I think that's where they're going with that. But it kind of takes back from what the group was actually created for. So now it's coming, okay, we're going to just make money the easy way, but that's not helping build the community what it was actually supposed to be created for.
All right. So I get that, and that's understandable, right? And I joined the group because I was like, hey, this looked like something interesting where we could help build each other. Now, the whole problem to me with that, and that is my opinion, so everybody's opinions when I'm done with this, is that we still going about this with a dependency on Instagram. You understand? We going about this with a dependency that, yes, follow each other 10,000. Now, 10,000 followers, right, just to get paid by Instagram is not going to do much for my business if they're not really coming and contributing to my business financially, right? So I had 10,000 followers because my business there, and everything I post, 10,000 more people posting it. So everything gets lost in the shuffle. Now, I had a guest on a few weeks ago, Angeli, who started this Black on Point thing, where she focuses on black businesses in the Houston area. And I think that's the direction we need to go. Anyone else have a comment before I move forward?
Yeah. I saw that, LaSella invited me to that chat room as well. And I thought the concept was dope. Okay, keep the black dollar in the black community. Okay, I get that. But that room did get out of control.
Oh, they had.
I was invited to a room on Facebook, Black Panther Party, and they actually talking about coming together and actually making the change, like I was saying, systematically. It's not let's get together and hate white people kind of thing. It's like, okay, let's work together. And they actually offering real solutions, because we have to understand that the division within the black community, because it's a system we've been worked on. It's a system that's been put in place. Like I said before, this Willie Lynch system, there's a new Willie Lynch book and there's an old Willie Lynch book. And thus the system has been put in place to, psychologically divide us. Now, we have to understand that this is not normal behavior for us, but we are consistent within each other, and we have to consciously move towards that. We have to educate each other. We have to come together. We have to consciously come together and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put politicians, in areas of power. We're going to work. We're going to vote to do this. We have to be the judges, the lawyers, the politicians. We have to be that. That's where we could start getting into those positions in the government, so that, let's be the police, so that we can take back some control over our own communities. Instead of,
that's what I was gonna point out with the black business group thing. Like, oh, it's a black business community kind of thing. But where is this community? How can I feel like I'm a part of this community without quite being a business owner, but I'm still black?
And not only where's the community is what they do with the money. It's like, okay,
right, it's going into your pocket as your business.
Money, are you putting the money back into the black community?
Well, that's right. What I was saying too. It's not building where the group was originally created to build the community. Them doing it that way is not building the community. It's going into your personal account. So what are you going to do with that money now?
Exactly.
What are you doing with it?
Right. Where is the community? Is the question. Where exactly is the community? Because now I want to come be a part of this, like Black Wall Street. The doctors and the teachers and the residents, the families, the mothers, the fathers, they all knew each other. They took care of each other. That's what makes them a black community. But in this particular thing,
some of these groups
where exactly is the community
right now and using it for their profit?
Well, the Black Wall Street was a system. It was in several cities, and it was Tulsa being the epicenter, being the
epicenter,
the richest, like
the heart
of that, that network. It was a network where Black people they had peace. They were able to keep their money, because right now the Black dollar circulates in the Black community for about 6 minutes. It circulates in other communities, the white, Asian. It stays in there longer. So we can keep that money into our pockets, because what we're doing with our money now, we're empowering. Okay. There was a list that came out of all the businesses, the companies that donated to Trump's reelection campaign. Places we go to like Wendy's and CVS, and like a lot of those companies were on there. So Black people, we generate the most money, but we're giving it to those companies, and they're taking that money and they're empowering Trump. Yeah. So if we can take that money from them and keep it in our communities and empower each other, then that's, that'll help us out. It's just keeping it.
Christine and I were talking about that today. That's exactly what I was going to say. How do you start doing that? How do you get the Black people to say, okay, I'm not going to buy the Wendy's. I'm not going to buy the KFC. I know plenty of Trinity people want to go Trinidad and buy KFC. How are you going to stop them from buying KFC? And that money is going to go to the politicians who is supporting the people that are bringing the Black communities down. What steps do you take for them? Posting a list on social media isn't going to help. Right. It might help 5-10 people, but what about the other billions and trillions of people that purchase?
We need to make our own Wendy's, make our own grocery stores, our own hospitals, our own things like that. We need our own banks. We need our own. Keep that money in our. We need to come together and build those things that they have that we don't have. We need to come together and build those. Like we have before in Black Wall Street, we had our own hospitals, our own grocery stores, our own banks, all of that stuff. So we can come together, bring our money together and do that. That's the answer.
That's exactly the answer, Mecca. That's, to me, and Lizelle, I think we all on the same page with that. Now, the thing is, right, we do have Black people in position where we beginning to acquire a little bit of wealth, right? What I see is, in my opinion, we have to start changing the things we value as Black people. And I'll give you an example. Now, I started off my career, I work in Kids for Locker and all that stuff. And every one of us, when we was young, had one of those jobs that was just a a transition, all right, into adulthood. Right now, I'm at where I'm at, right, as a nurse. Right, I'm a clinical manager. I drive around and people look at me and ask me, yo, my employees drive fancier cars than I do. Right? My employees, I see a Mercedes Benz, a Range Rover, BMW. Right? 2 Mercedes Benz. And I had a conversation with an employee about the Range Rover. And I'm like, listen, I have an Altima. It's 2013. I'll be done paying for it soon. When I'm done, the only money I invest in that is maintenance and to fix parts. I'm not going to invest my money again into any fancy thing. And I look at it like this. The more we make, we adjust our lifestyle to meet our budget. Right? So when you're making $15 an hour, you're struggling, you're using that to pay rent, to pay bills. You have desires, we want material things. You can't buy a pair of Jordans because your money going to rent or food. You get a raise, now you're making $20 an hour. And there's just the black people mind, in my opinion, how we value material things. $20 an hour, I value extra $200 in my wallet. Like, you know what? I always wanted to get our Jordan. So now we're going and satisfy our desire for what we couldn't afford. And it goes on and it goes up until we buy Louis Vuitton. And we're showing off with each other who are Gucci, who are Louis Vuitton, and who are fake and what not. And that's the beginning where we had to change that mindset. If we could get out of that mindset and look into
That's because
building.
that's what we were taught, though.
Correct.
People were taught. If you
So
make
that's
more
how
money, you go into the mind frame like, "Mama, we made it." Like,
we met. Right.
it's not the right thing.
Correct. And that's where we had to start to change, because now I remember living in Brooklyn, going to the projects, and their Lexus and Benz park up outside.
It's a show. It's a show.
But instead of we take our money, correct, and all the businesses in the black communities owned by Asians, whites, all the buildings owned by Jews. Right? And we don't invest in purchasing the block. Somebody said it. I know he said it on the show this morning, but somebody else said that in a video I was watching. I think it was Obama said it. Or somebody. We had to buy back the blocks. It wasn't Obama or somebody else. I don't know, but so many people say
one of those rap artists.
Yeah, somebody.
One of those artists.
But we had to buy back the blocks.
But Sheldon, it all come back to what was taught.
Something like burn it down and something like that.
It all come back to what we was taught, Sheldon. We are taught when we have money to buy. Yes, it all comes down to educating ourselves and our future generation to make that change.
And I agree with you. And how do we educate? Now, let's look at the hip-hop industry for as an example. Right? Look at the message they send now. The majority of the biggest hip-hop artists do not send a positive message. Right? Now, let's think about that on a wider scope.
You know what? I'm sorry. That's one of the ways we can make a change, because the media is big. The media is big in perpetuating negative stereotypes of Black people. There's so many talented Black artists that put out positive music and they don't get seen and they don't get heard. And we're not in control of that industry either. It's white folks, it's Jews. My radio station is owned by Jews. Like we don't have our own things like that.
Correct. But hear what?
NBC. We don't have an NBC. We don't have we got BET, but that's owned by.
But hear what?
That's our own fault, though.
Hear what? Right? I'll challenge that, because within the Black community, right? We know that that's the agenda they push. We know it. We're not oblivious to it. Mm-hmm. But our Black artists, right? There's so many artists that sing positive music. But I come from the hood, I get a break, right? And all I could sing about is sex, drugs, violence, And guess what happens when the media pushes that? You have check out some of the biggest artists who went platinum and all that shit. 6ix9ine come out and had how much millions of people his live reach, however the case is. And he didn't push a positive message to the black community at all. Right now, let's think about that. In our own community, this is what we're hearing, and this is what these young thugs coming up, and everybody now like, shit, he made it, I can make it. But they sing about violence, and look at Bobby Schmurda, look at the direction he went down. We have a lot of talented young individuals, but we don't push them either. Look at just how we promote on Facebook, promote ourselves. Now let me expand on that. Just picture these little white children listening to hip hop, right? And them parents or their grandparents grew up in a segregated time. And them little children now, they have all the social media and they're listening to hip hop. They're listening to what is the stripper name? Stripper rapper. They're looking at the Cardi B. Right? They're listening to the stripper one. They're listening to I don't pay attention to these people, Nicki Minaj and all of them. And this new one, Megan Thee Stallion, however, they message have nothing positive. So now you talking about all whiteheads who generally have that innate negative view of black people. They're teaching their children that. And the children playing this hip hop, trying to, be culturally involved, however the case is. And this is what the parents hearing. Like, oh, damn, they really living up to what we thought them to be. You understand?
Yeah, but the problem with that is we are a product of our environment. These people are a product of their environment. And you could only rap about what you know. So if this is all they know, this is what they were taught. This is all that they can practically rap about.
And what they're speaking about their personal lives, a lot of them. Right. This is stories that they're telling their story, regardless. I mean, yes, it's violence. Yes, it's about sex, how you discriminate on a woman. It's what they were taught. And it goes from generation to generation. So that generational thing has to stop.
It has to stop.
Now it raises the question, the saying says you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So it raises the question, do we start with our people or do we start with our kids and the generation that comes behind us? Because these old heads... we having a hard time with them.
Now, we start with us. Now, I'll tell you how it was growing back up in Nova. I grew up in Laventille, right? And back then, right? No, serious. Back then, right? It had the gangsters and the old heads and the gangsters, right? They grew up and they were in our life because they felt like it was the best option for them. But me as a youth growing up, I couldn't come out and say I will be no bad man, Them clouting me, listen, don't follow we footsteps. This is not the way, right? We in it, we don't know how to get out, but we don't want all it to grow up like that. We want better for our community. That's then.
But how did they prevent you from not following their footsteps? You could tell me all you want to, hey, don't follow my footsteps, right. But what are you going to do if I do it?
What I could do what they did is, if they find a youth man going down the footstep, is a community cut us again.
Yeah.
Right?
That's one thing about I know about
we don't have that.
I mean, Trinidad on a whole, it was communities. Everybody raised a village. That's what it was. The neighbor took care of you, even though you didn't live with the neighbor. But I have family that actually lived in Laventille. And same like Sheldon, they were not part of it. They were not allowed to be part of it. The gangs did not want them to. They wanted them to succeed because they saw something in my cousins to know that they can get out of that area. They knew that. One of my cousins didn't make it out of that area. He died literally before he could do that. But guess what? His daughter now plays steel pan competition.
He died or he was murdered?
He was hit by a car, a maxi taxi to be exact, and died. Yes, in Laventille. My uncle, a white man, his children were in Laventille, but guess what? They're very protective of who goes in there. Again, a community. So a community has to, just like what we have to try to build in the Black community, they have that community and they're watching out for their own. They're trying to build their own for those that they know that can get out. So why can't we take those tactics and build our own and protect our own?
Yeah, that's the direction we need to go. And we need to spread the conversation, because just thinking about thing, right? Just thinking about TNT, how the crime rate high. We so small-minded and we so love as we get a little, and I think this morning they was talking about Trouble in the Morning, the $1,200 stimulus check that people get, right? Everybody, big thing. Yeah, I got my 1,200. You can get yours, and it was a big conversation. Ha ha ha. Right? We as Black people need to stop taking scraps and accepting it as progress, and we do that a lot. We get scraps, it show we a bone, we take it and we like, yeah, look what we have. We get something, but we have nothing. Look at Brooklyn. Look how they change the whole geography. The demographic of Flatbush alone. And that's why, because we didn't take time to own anything. And if we did own, we sell out. We look at what we could get in exchange. I have it. So here what? I go and say, how much you offering? $500,000? Yeah. But we didn't think of the wider scope of how it affects the community. And it also is so many layers to the thing. It goes back to the zoning, to the voting, because they push people out. That Barclays Center. You know how much people they push out that community to bring in that Barclays Center? Is one man who stood the ground until they offer him like 2.5 million or something to sell the house. So that's where this whole it increased the rate of the change in the demographics in the community in Brooklyn. Right? But we had to keep having this conversation with each other, with our kids, and we need to find a way to get more people to be involved in these conversations, more Black people. Well, that's how the only way we could start organizing and progressing. We need help from the system, but without us starting ourselves and standing up together and say we're not accepting this shit, if we take we money out of the economy and put it in our own economy, like Mecca said, money don't last in the Black economy long. It's gone. The minute we get it, it's gone.
Sheldon, sorry to interrupt. You're saying, okay, the government has, or, people in politics, Black people in politics, similar to what Trouble in the Morning had this morning, the police officers that did not want to come and interview because they're afraid they'll lose their jobs. A lot of these politicians that can speak out will not speak out because either they're going to lose votes, they're going to get fired or laid off from their jobs,
their position.
So again, it's the mindset of the individual. How we have to change. I don't know what to say if we have to change their mindsets, but they need to change their mindsets because they have the platforms, like what Mecca was saying earlier. It needs to be spoken about. How do we get them to speak without them being afraid that they're going to lose their job, but at the same time help the Black communities?
It starts with us. It starts with each individual in the community, right? It had to spread like a disease. It starts with me and my neighbor. It starts with me coming home and seeing them fellas on the block. And not coming and be like, hey, what are they doing on the block? Have a conversation. Hey, what's going on, fellas? Because generally when you live in a neighborhood with people on the block, they know you. They say, hey, this man always coming from work. Right? And have a conversation with them. Hey, how come this? And we start a conversation. That's where it starts. We know in every hood, right? You have 90%, right? Or the majority of people that are productive citizens, but they're struggling to get by. And you have these few people who are the bad apples. They may not see another way. They may not have somebody like me or, people, or somebody like Max who doing something with himself to say, hey guys, stop it. Because you know what happened? We get so caught up with ourselves and trying to get out of where we are that we sometimes forget to look back. Forget to say, guys, listen, I'm not saying I'm going to, lift your whole load, but let me have a conversation with you. Let's talk about certain things. Let's talk about wealth. Let's have a discussion about the stock market, right? All these white people making money right now, That stimulus bill passed. They give everybody $1,200 for them to turn the eye, and they put all our money back in the economy. Why is it universities need money when almost every American have a student loan that they could never pay back because of the interest? All our money going into big businesses, right? Now we as black people, this is where the conversation needs to start to shift. How do we build wealth rather than always we put money in our bank? What is the percentage you getting back on that money in the bank? Very slim, if you have any at all. Right now, I'm not saying everybody have to invest in the stock market. I'm just saying the conversation needs to change. We need to stop teasing people who don't have it. Make me feel like as soon as I get money, I have to reach up to community standards and buy a pair of Jordans. And it starts from the youth. I see people buying a 2-year-old Jordans. What your child going to do? Going to model? That's not necessary. Them don't even care about that. 3-4-year-old, all I'm studying is Barney, Sesame Street. I mean, that is old time. They have new thing now. Peppa Pig. I don't like Peppa Pig. Anyhow. Peppa Pig is disrespectful. But we have to change the mindset. Like, and even before this situation with George Floyd, I started pushing, and the flyer so on the screen now, pushing small businesses, because I understand that the economy going to open back up. A lot of black owned small businesses will not survive after this COVID. Will not. No matter how we try to support them. But if all of us in the communities, when we open back up and the economy opens back up, right, instead of going to Wendy's and McDonald's, which may be franchised by a black person, we still have to keep that in mind. We look to go to the man who have the little restaurant in the community, right? Somebody who have a little clothing store in the community. Somebody who have the hair salon, nail salon. The other part of that is we as black people who run in business have to, one, improve our way of dealing with our customers. And two, make sure that our customers could afford the services we providing, even though that will be challenging, but that's a big thing. Go ahead, Mecca.
I had a, when I found out we were getting stimulus checks, I reached out to some people and I said, hey, let's put our checks together and open a business. Let's do something, because I'm a business owner. But I said, hey, let's put our money together and have a farmer's market. Let's do something like that, and I couldn't find anybody that was on board. So it was a bit disappointing for me. We need to start thinking like that as a unit. As a unit, I have a friend, and she, I've been making soaps for a very long time, and my business hasn't gotten off the ground because everything's organic. The way just find that out there. You're right. It wasn't. I should have. A friend, she saw me working on my soaps and stuff, and she started her skincare line, and she reached out to me and said, hey, I see you've been making soaps and stuff. How you doing? I said, not good. It's expensive. I need investors. And she was like, well, I would like a partner. Let's partner up. And I was happy about that, because it's like, okay, this is some kind of, this is recently that happened. Now I'm saying like, okay, I'm hopeful because it's a start. She's a black business owner. I'm a black business owner. We can put our resources together, our marketing together, things, and we can grow from that. And we need to collectively do more things like that. Bring our resources together, work with each other, not be competing with each other. That's one of the ways we can do it. To keep our money within our community and help each other's businesses out.
Correct. And I just want to point out for anybody who didn't realize or recognize, SocaPassionTX.com has a page specifically with black-owned businesses, right? And that's something that we need more of, and it's black-owned businesses pretty much in the Houston area, right? So individually, these are things that we need to do. Mecca, you had an idea, right? You reach out to people, I don't want to do it. You're going to get that. You're going to definitely get that. But we had to keep pushing. Figure out, listen, all right, I didn't make it with this one, I didn't make it with that one. There are other people out there who willing. I reach out to so many people about a small business. I still waiting on responses from people, but you know what? It is not going to deter the goal. It's always going to be like, what's the next step? And we having this conversation, if we could start to reach out to one other person, 5 are we here now? Next week, if we get one person to participate, who needs to? I am birds are taking you back.
Birds, Christina.
Oh, my bad.
I am animals. I know somewhere they lay out the animals in the zoo. I thought you was in Florida, not Philly. But we need to just start with us, right? And start with how we could work together and improve ourselves. And one person, if we start bringing in one person, eventually, hopefully we reach to where we need to be, and I appreciate that, Mecca. But next time, it has some of us you may not know would be interested in coming on board with your business. We sit down together business plan.
I reached out to the people who I know were interested.
You didn't reach out to me.
I know.
Me.
You're right. I should have. I reached out to the people who I spoke with before, who I knew were actually interested in doing something like that, and then they kind of reneged.
Right. So the minute them renege, you move on. How much people you have in your network? You just go along until you find somebody.
You know why I stopped? Because I never got my stimulus check. So I stopped asking people.
I understand your pain.
I still haven't gotten it to this day. So that's why I stopped there. I asked people who I knew was interested. And since I never got the check, I just stopped asking.
Now, I'll tell you this. Sometimes you just still need to push. Listen, we need to do this. You come up with the plan. It have people who might say, you know what, you're not the startup money, like we start up. And then we go from here. We start a business together. I pour out so much money. I get back the money I poured, and then we promote the business and move together. Your ideas, your plan, is not everybody could financially contribute to a business. You might bring something to the table that I would need, but you don't have the funds for it. I had the funds. I could back it. But your plan, we sit down and we realize, hey, this could work. Now, I take in risk financially, correct. But if I am a business-minded person, nothing, you can't go without risk. Everything we do is risk-reward, right? So much people invest so much right before this COVID-19. They take a risk. What happened? COVID-19 come, destroy all of that. Right, but we had to learn to get back up as black people. And we have 12 more minutes before this whole segment up.
We could go over, No, actually, no, this is a short 7. Sorry. If I get somebody coming on at 7, I'm like, we could go over.
Yeah. So I just feel like we need to have conversations like these. And, we need to just always expand and make sure. And Christina and Maxwell, the show on Sunday is, pretty much discussions and stuff like that. And I don't have the time to have a next show, to be honest, so I'm not going to just...
Oh, we got it. Today, I didn't have the availability to make the noise that I normally make, so I passed it on to somebody else.
Understood. We get that. But I know you guys have it, and is something we need to kind of push more and promote more is conversations like this. Because after all the protests stop, then what's the next step? We go on, we jam with music, with shows, and everything like that. We look to build, we following, and we go back to life as normal. It cannot be back to life as normal.
That's what I said. And like I said, this is the same conversation that I have a small group of friends. So this is the conversation that I've always been having to them, especially in the last 3 to 5 months. Like, yeah, we talk about our Zoom parties and man and all of that. But at nighttime, when we have our 1 a.m., 2 a.m. conversation,
be with me.
Right. I'm telling them about FICO scores and boosting your credit. And yeah, we're not family, but I think that we should go here and buy a big house. All of us, at least we can all say we own a little bit of the American pie. In 4 or 5 years, we double back, decide what we want to do. We want to sell and break, or we want to keep it, because majority of us have kids. So even if we keep it and we don't use it, at least it's there for our kids and then their kids. Yeah, and we have it, that belongs to us.
Correct.
Nobody can take it from us.
If more people can do, like, it's almost every night, Feisty and I are on the phone for 2 hours, just thinking of different ways to build each other as Black women, that our kids, the generations to follow, and their kids, as far as it goes back, we will set that pathway for them. If more people can do things like how we have those conversations, that's a start in building each other. And that's one thing. We can't build if we keep fighting each other. We have to stop that.
That's important.
We have to invest in stocks. We have to invest in real estate. We have to keep this momentum going, because right now we got the world behind us. The world is watching. They see what's going on over here, and they're standing up too. We got Italy rioting, France, London, in New Zealand, they did a haka, for Black Lives Matter. We got the world behind us. They're watching us now. Now we can't stop here. We got to keep the momentum going. We have to make a real change. We got to, and make a financial change. We have to,
a positive change.
Build up generational wealth in the Black community. We have to keep this momentum going. We can't just get mad and tear up shit. Tear up and stop. We have to keep it going. Keep the conversation going. Keep educating each other.
Correct. And now is the time. Now is the time, because even it, and I think is the perfect opportunity also, because where the economy is where it's at, and is a phase where we could actually get in there, those of us who can, right, and start to own things. You know how much people make millions off of the stock market. Let's build wealth and then spread it in the community. When we come out of this in a few years, right, we should own our own block, right? We should be able to decide what goes on our blocks. There's no reason why the Asian should own the whole block, all the businesses, the dry cleaners, the nail salon, right? The fresh fruit stall, the supermarket. If them don't own that, right? The hair salons or whatever they're selling here products, nail products. When you look at the other side, the liquor store is the corner stores, is the Middle Easterns owning it. The buildings we live in is the Jews owning it. We own nothing. You understand? So this is where we now have to start back. We're investing in the community. And the more of us at this ground level, we need to start to take it back, because the people at the level who could do it now, which is majority of the superstars and the rappers and everything, majority of them not doing it. Now, I would say positively, right, before we end, I have seen some positive changes. I have seen Michael Jordan take some money and say he's going to invest in the Black community. I've seen... Michael Jordan. 100 million, yes, over 10 years. I've seen
20 years ago.
Yeah, that happened recently. 100 million he pledged over a 10-year period to go into the Black community. There are areas where they're taking money that they contribute to the police department and reinvesting it into the Black community.
Now, there's another artist, hip hop artist, that's actually said it's time to buy back the blocks.
Right.
And he's in the process of doing that. So there's some
start.
Yeah.
Another thing I noticed also in some police departments, I don't know exactly where it is, but there's one place that I think is where George Floyd got killed. They outlawed the chokehold. They make it illegal. I think Dallas they put in a change where it say something to the extent of, if I'm a police officer and I see you as my partner abusing your force, it is my duty to intervene. Right? They no longer accepting that is a code. You have to intervene now. So they are slowly making some change.
That was even a code.
Huh? What's that?
That's actually a thing.
Yeah.
Like they had to put it in effect that if as your partner see you abuse,
if that is what they had to do now to get the changes, I accept in that. If it had to be in black and white to hold people accountable, let's do that, because they don't understand that mentally. And imagine me as a police, and just goes back to the trouble in the morning, where the officer said there's certain things they can't say or do because of the position they're in. Right? Now, I had a black friend of mine also who I was going to chat with on Wednesday live. Had nothing to do with no show. And he was supposed to be off, and they call him out. He's with NYPD. Right? And he's the one I shared his post where he stood up and said he's not accepting anybody. He's not going to stand by and watch another officer abuse a black person. Right? So he was willing to chat, but he got called out to duty. So we do have people in there, but they need to be able to stand up. Right? To say that I'm not accepting this. I in the police force and I don't care. Right? I got sacrifice my job to stand up for the right thing. That's the type of person I am. I'm in healthcare, right? And I'll just use this as an example. I'm in healthcare. I was a union delegate. And I would tell the employees that I represent, there's no way I'm going to stand up for you with that foolishness you're doing. You know why? Because my duty is to help people and make sure to improve their life, improve their quality of life. Now, if you know what you're supposed to do and you're doing what you're supposed to do and you make a mistake, that's something I could live with. But if you jeopardize someone's life because of laziness, because of neglect, or you just refuse to do the right thing, I am not going to stand up with you for that. You know what happened? People vote me out. And I was fine with that, because I'm not going to condone no bullshit. I'm not going to put anyone's life at risk because I want to be a union delegate or because I'm supposed to be your defendant. Right? So I feel like the same concept go with the police union and shit. But anyhow, we're running out of time. I'm hoping that we could have this conversation again soon.
For having us.
Christina and Max, we're looking forward to some conversations. Josh is willing to speak to anybody at any time. Mecca, I'll share information so that way you could get on and speak to a white audience directly.
Okay.
All right. So thanks everybody for participating.
Thanks for having us.
All right. And I hope everyone stays well and be safe, and let's continue to talk behind the scenes. All right.
I'm here for it.
All right.
Yes.